Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us for today's PPN Bitesize interview. And we're just going to spend the next 15 minutes or so talking about the future of procure to pay. And I'm really excited and pleased to be able to do that with somebody who is very well placed to talk about the direction of the industry, and that is President and COO of Corecentric, Matt Clark. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Ellen. Thanks for having me on.
That's a pleasure. How are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well.
Great. And it's funny, actually, just before we came on air, I was thinking about the last time that we met, and I think it was way back just before the pandemic,
Yeah.
January 2020, at an event that you guys held at the Gherkin. And the world has changed massively in a way that we had no idea that was going to come our way and hit us at that point. And I thought it'd be really interesting to speak to you today and just find out your thoughts and views on the industry. And perhaps, if you can, bearing in mind we're talking about the future of procure to pay, if you can maybe talk to us about what the drivers are that you see of further digitization across that space.
Yeah, sure. So I think you just touched on a real big driver, which is everything that we all experienced over the last few years here. And what that really has done is taken, the back office and pushed it out to thousands of micro offices. And so digitization is necessary to be, able to accommodate that environment. I'd also say that with some of the macroeconomic pressures that are going on right now, companies are being asked to, and managers and leaders are being asked to do more with less. And so when that kind of comes to shore, everybody's got to think differently and think outside the box and think about digitization and automation. And then the last thing I would say is I think a big driver of the behind the whole digitalization effort is a generational component to it. I think a younger workforce has expectations around what technology is going to be used, and they have high standards for technology and automation, and they're not going to accept an environment in the workplace that doesn't closely mirror what they experience in their personal lives.
And that's so true. I mean, I've actually got my daughters are that kind of age now, just entering into that workforce, and that is a real driver for them. They're actually looking at, okay, what is the reputation of the company that I'm going to? How does it fit into the ESG agenda? And what are the digitization aspects of that company that I'm going to, and does it offer that kind of flexibility? We were talking just before we went live just now a little bit about that remote working and the necessity for that digitization in the space. But I think that it probably even goes back one step further than that, doesn't it? If you're thinking about some of those pressures you talked about just now, about high inflation, for example, some of the interest rate rises that we're seeing, and the impact that has also on wage inflation.
Right.
Because we just have to look at the banking jitters that we're seeing at the moment. Obviously, in the States, there we've had SVB Bank and then Credit Suisse, and I think today with some rumblings on Deutsche Bank as well. That is going to have an impact on wages and inflation for sure. So what are the impacts, do you think, of digitization on how we recruit and who we recruit, perhaps looking at some of the skills gaps there as well?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we're seeing, and when you talk digitization, I mean, if you're seeing what's happening from an artificial intelligence perspective, whether it's ChatGPT or any of these other tools that are coming out, I think businesses are looking more for people that have the skills to take advantage of those technologies. So maybe not those kind of people that are coming in and just doing a whole bunch of manual key punching and things of that nature. They're looking for more strategic resources that can lead, guide, and take advantage of all the technologies and the digitalization offerings that are out there. So I think you see a shift into that, that kind of more kind of technical mindset, and that more kind of strategic mindset versus just throwing bodies at a problem like we might have done traditionally.
And the beauty now, as we were just saying, is that you can recruit anybody from anywhere,
Right.
because if you have that kind of flexibility, and if you have that digitization of your, not just your workforce, but also your process, you can make sure that you've got that business continuity,
Right.
that attracts those right people, and so that it's not just about presenteeism, having somebody there in the office, but the best people, like we were
Right.
just saying.
Yep.
Um, so, I mean, I suppose, thinking about all the things that you've just said, we've established, the drivers, why it's so important to have that digitization in our organizations. But then you think, well, if the drivers are that straightforward and that simple to understand, why is it that it's not more, it's not deeper into the organizations, and that some are still coping with manual processes? Why is that, do you think?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that come to mind on that front. One is, yeah, we're in kind of second and third generations of some technologies, and I think some of the folks that made that digital push many
Yeah.
years ago did so in a way that maybe wasn't the best from a strategic standpoint. So maybe stitching together multiple different technology solutions and then having missed expectations from that and having trouble getting the outcomes that they thought they were going to get. So there's a little bit of a kind of jaded mindset out there around,
Mhm.
okay, somebody's going to come and tell me this, technology and digitalization is going to solve all my problems. But technology alone can't solve these problems. You have to have a technology combined with a really good strategy around how you're going to do that. And you got to think big picture. You can't think in these very kind of myopic silos. You got to think, okay, what am I doing? What am I trying to digitize? Maybe you're
Mm,
not going to do it all at once, but you got to think about that roadmap all at once so that you're not pigeonholing yourself into something that would prevent you from getting to those outcomes. And then I'd say the other thing is just that inertia. I think
mm,
the thing we always talk about is our biggest competition is resistance to change. It's
yeah.
not other providers out there. It's dealing with folks that are saying, this is the way we've always done it. I'm comfortable with this. I think I probably know that I should go in that direction, but
Mm.
making that leap and overcoming that resistance to change and that inertia certainly becomes a challenge in a lot of organizations.
It's such a tricky one, isn't it? Really, it's because it's really hard to be able to see where that is coming from, and maybe it's, if you've got this large picture, perhaps sometimes people find it difficult to try and manage that. But if they have, like you say, implemented something a long time ago, perhaps they're just a little bit bored of it as well, or not able to see the direction of where digitization can go. And I'm sure you'll agree that it's, the way that digitization is going, it's so much more possibilities now than there ever were,
Right.
going back sort of even only sort of 5 years ago, pre-pandemic. Massively changed, hasn't it? And it's so important to focus on those outcomes.
Absolutely. Yep.
um, but sometimes it comes down to budget as well, isn't it? Ultimately, we all have to think about the budgets that we play around with. What then? What do you do if you're faced with someone who says, "Okay, that sounds great, Matt, but I don't have the money for it." What then?
Yeah, so something we focus on, and I think it resonates very well, is trying to create situations where we can deliver value as early in that life cycle as possible, and also create situations where there are guaranteed outcomes. And it goes back to what I just talked about people
Mm,
maybe jaded from past experiences where they spent a lot of money on the front end, were promised the sun, the moon, and the stars in terms of what they were going to save down the road, and maybe
mm,
never realized those savings. So we like to work closely with our clients to really kind of understand where we can deliver value as early as possible. And so, in addition to our technology, we're also bringing to bear advisory services that can work with companies and say, okay, let's analyze your spend and let's try to find places where we can reduce costs by 20 to 25% by doing category optimization and things of that nature. And
mm,
let's use those savings to fund some of the technology and other efforts that we want to bring to bear with those clients. So I think really trying to focus on speed to value and
mm,
then guaranteed outcomes helps overcome a lot of that, and you can really draw a very straight line to say, yes, this is what you're going to spend, but your return on that investment is going to be quick and it's going to be somewhat certain.
And that's really important, isn't it? I think just listening to you there, I mean, sometimes, yeah, I agree. You've got to have that long-term plan. You've certainly got to know what those outcomes are, but it's going to be really important for getting people over that inertia. If, like you say, they've got some stepping stones along the way and can see those quick returns initially, then, because I'm sure that would G people up.
Right.
Saying, you know what, actually, now I can see the direction that we're going. I've got this kind of return. I want to keep going along that journey and see what else I can get out of it. So, I mean, you touched on it a little bit just then, but what kind of role do you think that managed service partnerships have in that kind of environment that we're talking about?
Yeah, so we're big believers in managed services complementing technology because we think it's critical to success. Everybody's in an environment where they're pretty tapped out when it comes to bandwidth and those sorts of things, and so it's a very logical thing for companies to think about. Okay, let me focus on my core competencies. Let me focus on whatever it is my business does, and let me
Yeah.
concentrate my resources on that. And then the managed services kind of complementing the technology allows for a couple things. One, allows for that focus on the core competency. But two, it also allows something that we talk about often, which is that right kind of dynamic scaling of resources. So in this very volatile environment we're living in right now, and you see it every day in the news, right? Companies go and hire a bunch of people, and then 6 months later you're reading about how they're doing major layoffs. And so this kind of the managed services complementing your core competency resources allows for that kind of dynamic scaling where the resource pool you're tapping from a managed service perspective is growing and shrinking in lockstep with market cycles. And so that's very hard to do if you're managing that just your own resources, because again, you get in this tail chasing exercise of, okay, I got to hire more people. Okay, now I got to let people off. As economy's doing well, doing bad, you just on this kind of never ending roller coaster, and it just has major impacts to the business. So we like to talk to folks about saying, look, why worry about that? Let us maintain that. We have resources that's all they do. That's their core competency, and you focus on your core competency and that very kind of in lockstep scaling up and down, so that you're not one step behind always.
Well, interesting hearing you say that, because I think we started this conversation with you saying that organizations are being challenged to do more with less, and I suppose you saying that enables organizations to actually do that. They can lean on somebody else to provide them with the kind of competencies which they may have, but not necessarily have the time. So you're giving them back essentially you're giving them back their time and their efficiencies into their own businesses. So I can see, particularly in this environment, how that would be something that would be really useful for organizations to be able to utilize when they want to do that. So, I mean, well, thank you, Matt. It is bite-sized, and I'm sure we could talk for ever and a day about each one of those things that we've just covered. But we're nearly coming up to our 15 minutes. So I just wonder what's next for Concentric. I mean, what are we're I can't believe we're already on the 23rd of March, but it's still relatively early on in the year. So what are your plans for the upcoming year for Concentric?
Yeah, so this is a really exciting year for us because we've been on quite putting together the pieces that we feel are necessary to solve for some of the combination of technology, advisory, and managed services, and then some kind of unique payment capabilities. So really, really getting out in the market and knowing that we have something that can really truly help companies out there deal with these challenges, and just trying to get in front of as many of these folks as possible and partner with them to really come up with the right solution for them. That's the other kind of challenge in this world, is that there's a lot of solutions for all. And we really want to create, bespoke solutions that work for our customers and directly address, the challenges they're facing. And so in this environment, what we all don't want to be in, where there's all sorts of challenges, we feel like it's our responsibility to really, be that partner for companies to help them navigate these very choppy waters. So I think we'll have, and we have already seen it this year. We have a lot of attention and interest being paid to what we can bring to the table because of all the conditions that are existing here today. I always say, in the kind of toughest economic times is when I think you make the most advancements on these fronts, because when everything's going great, people are just sitting there saying, if it's not broken, why fix it? But when there's a lot of headwinds, people are out there saying, okay, we got to think differently, and we want to be there to partner with those folks that are trying to think differently.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Matt. That you put it in a nutshell there. I think you're providing them with I guess the kind of controls and certainty that they need in these pretty uncertain times. Control what you can, I guess. Well, thank you very much, Matt. And I'm sure if anyone listening has got any questions, they can come through to you, and you can get those answered for them, or by all means come through to me as well. Well, thank you very much for joining us today on PPN's Bite-Size Interview, and everyone watching, I'll see you all again soon. But thank you very much, Matt, for sharing your insights with us today. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Ellen.
Bye-bye. Bye. There we are.